Welcome to the MMA Roadshow, episode number 270. My name is John Morgan. Cold coffee is with me.
Yes.
And a special bonus, the man now known as Hot Tea.
There you go. Hot Carl.
It is it is Oscar Willis from the Mac Life. It is our quarantine crew. We've been hanging out a little bit, so we thought it'd be fine to come together and social distance all together today and talk a little bit of mixed martial arts. Gentlemen, it is hot in Las Vegas, man. Let's just update the world. All we've had to talk about is coronavirus and COVID-19 for a while.
Yeah.
It's hot. It's hot. The
It's super hot. Yeah.
And by the way, bumper to bumper traffic on the way over here. I am calling for the world to go back in lockdown. I was sitting in traffic for the first time in 2 months, and I'm just ready to go back in lockdown.
Yeah, it had to be an accident though. There's no businesses open right now.
I don't know.
Did you see anything when you
Phase
drove?
one reopening. I think there was an accident or something. But I had to jump off the highway and take some back streets and all that. And phase one's too much. We got to go back.
Safe.
It's not safe out there. We got to sit there right back inside.
Yeah, I have to say, when you go through the winter in Vegas, by the time summer comes around, you sort of forget. Like, oh, actually, no, I forgot. This is the desert, and it's unspeakably hot. And so, lying in bed, slowly just drenching your covers is not great.
I think it's 106 degrees, which usually, we're late May. Usually, by June, July, we're basically June at this point. So
It says 108 right now.
108. So
on the
108.
weather channel.
That's 42 for the people who know the real temperature.
That doesn't even sound
That
right.
doesn't sound right. Yeah, 42. Ooh, chilly. Put a jacket on.
I'm gonna go inside and put some more layers on.
No, we're getting back to a little bit of life as normal, right? The world is opening up slowly but surely. Of course, everybody's taking things slowly. Everything's still respecting the social distancing, wearing the mask, doing all that good stuff. I will say it was Memorial Day this past weekend, and of course, man, Memorial Day, a very, very important holiday for all of us, man. I mean, what it stands for and what we're remembering on that day. But to be honest with you, I 100% open. I had no idea it was Memorial Day. I have lost such sense of time and whatever. There were people that were like sending emails or whatever, like, "Hey, enjoy the long weekend." I'm like, every weekend's long now. Dude. What are you talking about? And I was like, oh. So I don't know. I'm anxious to get back on a little bit of a routine.
Yeah, I think when they said, as we all went into lockdown, that by the time it's over, we'll all have felt it was for nothing because we won't have seen such crazy stuff. I have to say, the last few days, certainly since coming back from Florida, where we had a glimpse of the old world, having a restaurant and stuff like that at the hotel, I have to say, it's starting to get like, okay, we're reopening bars, but not really reopening bars. Like, you have to have food. I'm like, can we just get on with it now? Can the world come back, please? I really am over it.
I will say I've not. I mean, I guess we've only been open a couple days, right, in terms of restaurants, at least from us being back. I haven't
even
gone.
Some of them.
Yeah.
It's not even full. I think the 4th is when more are gonna open.
I haven't gone and
up.
dined out yet.
No, same.
I don't.
I haven't either.
Yeah,
I've been
picked up food.
I'm in no rush to do it. I mean, just to sit in a place. I am getting a little antsy because I want to feel that sense of normalcy, and I'm Agent H and me. I think we're about to kill each other just because we need to get out of the house. I never leave the house, and now if I wanted to leave the house, there's no place for me to really go. But now things are starting to open up, so it feels a little bit better. But she's been itching to get out, and then today, before you gentlemen came over, I was like, I just want to go get something to eat, and it feels like there's more options now to grab some things to eat. But I still was just like, I just don't have the desire yet to run back in. And it's weird. I went to a Subway, and I was like, do I put the mask on? Do I not put the mask on? Because it'd been a minute, But I was like, of course, got to put the mask on.
Right.
Went in there. There was a few people that didn't have them. Of course, the people behind the counter did. There was another gentleman eating. He had his mask on. Or picking up food. He had his mask on. And even then, I want to go back to the point where you can walk into a place and like sit down, but it's going to feel super awkward. Walk into a place, sit down, not have a mask on, because obviously you're not going to move the mask. Just
have you checked in on your boys? It's like
Sear Barbecue.
Yeah,
I've been
Korean
constantly
barbecue is
stalking them.
Can Korean barbecue exist anymore?
Not yet. It's not back yet.
Because I heard that like buffets at
I think
they're
have
gone.
To,
I heard like Vegas buffets are done.
Yeah, they have to. We worked that whole thing. You can't just have ladles and things of everybody just.
So you'll probably still be able to like cook at your table, but maybe you just have to have the product delivered to you, and you have to request it or something.
That would be a. That,
I mean, I
that
know
would be
that's
a
why
suggestion.
people tune in to the MMA Roadshow is to find out about the future of Korean barbecue.
They really, really should. Though.
But I know that means a lot to you, Cold Coffee. That's your spot.
If there is a place that I'm dying to go back to, that is the one.
That would be
is the
like
one.
if the COVID-19 pandemic had somehow like made buffalo wings like impossible to access.
Yeah.
Like people would be concerned for my well-being. So I'm concerned for your well-being.
I appreciate that. My mental health is teetering on the fact of when it's finally going to open or not. I am longing for that. But yeah, I mean, as for getting out to a restaurant, I think it'll be nice just to see people. I think there's something about when you go out to a place and you see people outside of a grocery store, because even in grocery stores just feel weird because you're seeing people, but everybody's still sort of like, I'll stay on my side of the aisle, you stay on your side, and we're passing like two ships, and it's like, oh, keep your arms in, don't
so
get too close.
So you're still supposed to do like if you go to a bar or whatever, you still. I mean, are they still 6 feet apart?
No,
or?
so the bars that don't serve food are allowed to open on Friday. So an area of incredible interest to me. That's why I know all the rules.
But you're not allowed going up to the bar,
so
right?
you're not allowed to go up to the bar to order. You have to sit at a table 6 feet away from everyone else at their table, and they come take your order. So if you imagine that, and you're wearing masks, I can't pick up a woman under those conditions, guys. I mean,
it was confusing at first, unless you worked in the food industry or hear somebody say like the term bar top,
right?
Because it was like you could sit at a bar top, but you can't go up to the bar top.
A lot of people don't know what that means.
And ask for a beer. I was like, wait, so you could sit at a bar top, but you can't go up to the bar top and ask for a beer.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So the bar rail still has to stay.
You can't. Yeah, you can't go belly up at the bar. You can't
Yeah.
go up and ask for it. You suppose you have to sit at a table, and then somebody's gonna have to come serve you.
Now
or
look,
whatever.
I'm married, so I'm good, right? But single life in Las Vegas is tough enough, man. I've heard the stories, and I always warn people because my single friends always tell me it's hard to meet like normal people here in Las Vegas.
Oh yeah.
So
I met my girl at a bar.
as I said, it's hard to meet normal people.
I still haven't met the normal people yet.
I've heard they're out there, guys, but yet to find the evidence.
But
Well, 'cause they
what
usually
I was gonna
say-
say, but the mask. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess in some ways it could hurt, or in some ways like it might help some people, right?
I think, to be
She
honest,
had the most beautiful eyes, the most god awful teeth. It worked until the mask came off.
jeez, I would be in trouble.
Oh, your teeth are fine, hot tea.
Oh, thanks, darling.
You're very
No,
English.
Well, I just, if my whole game's based around the accent and it's just going to ruin me. It's gonna,
That's so true,
yeah.
man. The accent game is impacted.
It's going to kill me. And then can you imagine as well, you try and take a real big drag of a cigarette, and then put it in your mask and smoke just pokes out the side like
Like a little
It's
dragon.
going to be disgusting. So I think I'm going to be, if you go to the bar and it's like that situation,
Yeah.
part of the bar fun is talking to people and just
Right.
get.
Yeah.
I feel like if you all go there and you'll just sit on your own
Sitting
table,
by yourself.
that's not the bar, So I'd rather just wait until they get.
I'm sure we'll get a
Well, it
report
is-
back. You let us know how it goes. Let us know if it's uncomfortable or not.
Friday at 10 a.m. I'll be in there.
Well, oddly enough, every person that is going to the bars doing whatever has that. Everybody has something they can talk about. They have that. They have the icebreaker, like. Whereas before,
You
it's
been
like you
coughing?
make the. Yeah. I hear you. I can tell you're not coughing. You must be good. But are you good? I mean, you think about it.
There's got to be some cheesy pickup line like,
Are you-
"You really good 'cause you got that antibody" or something.
Are you, are you positive? Not COVID.
So it should be interesting. But I mean, I think it's funny because I think there are a lot of people out there dying, and you see this in states like Wisconsin when they just said, "Hell with you, Governor. We're going to go out to the bars," and they did their own thing. People are dying and people are itching to just get out of the bars. I have a feeling that. Well, there are some of us that are going to be slow to kind of jump the gun and run out there because I have no real desire to just start hitting all the different bars.
Right.
I was talking to Oscar about this earlier. If my local watering hole was still in existence, maybe I would want to get back there because then it would feel like a sense of normalcy.
Pour one out for boomers.
Yeah, right? But as for just like, going to any establishment, like I'm not itching just to run to a bar to have a drink just because it's open.
I don't think you're in the minority there, man. I think a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's why it's going to take a while. I think for the economy to really
Definitely
get back.
Vegas. Definitely here.
Who is it? I was just reading in the paper, and even though now hotels are starting to open back up, some casinos are starting to open back up, but one of the big gaming places here in town just sent letters to their employees. It was just in the paper about them saying they're going to still have some layoffs because they're not quite sure of what the recovery.
Yeah.
It's so heartbreaking because here we are at a point where you think like, oh man, we're getting to the other side of things, and you're still having major gaming companies sending letters to their employees saying like, well, we're not quite sure how quickly it's going to come back.
I hate to say it because, I mean, obviously we like to just have fun and talk some fights here, but if we're just being realistic about the world, like even as we're starting to open back up a little bit, I just cautiously warn everybody, like, consumer spending is not going to be what it was before, and that has a spiraling effect, man. I hope everybody realizes, I'm not trying to, be this bad news guy or whatever, but, like, man, still be cautious about your finances and all that, because I don't think everything is going to come back like 100%.
Well, it's a catch-22, right? Because if you run out and behave as if nothing ever happened, and you spend, try and get the economy going back, you're basically guaranteeing that in 3 months we're back inside.
Right.
If we go back out and just pretend like everything's fine, the virus is going to have a second wave. If you go out and you maintain social distance and we do it very slowly, that's not going to help the economy very much, and people are still going to lose their jobs, but maybe we'll be able to stay out. It's a
balance.
Yeah, it's a terrible one.
It's so crazy.
So what's happening with the since I know some people use these apps, do people still Tinder and Bumble, whatever, in this environment?
A good friend told me. I was reading about it online. Look, people are bored. They need people to talk to. But Tinder.
Do they do temp checks?
Sort of. Well, Tinder, for some reason, I guess because business was down, Tinder decided that you didn't just match with people in your area, you matched with people all over the world. Now, I appreciate that, Tinder, but there's not a lot of good that me matching with some fucking person in Sao Paulo is going to do me.
Yeah.
So,
So they just started forcing that in?
Yeah, they're just like, right, everyone, you can match with girl in Glasgow. I don't want to. It just went on and on. So I think they've
hilarious.
counted that down. But yeah, so I think...
it's still happening.
Oh, look, people got to spend their energy somewhere.
Got to get that bedroom cardio in, as Colby Covington would like to let
I just hope people are practicing temperature checks.
Oh, they are.
Being safe.
It's just interesting the way they're checking for
Check.
it.
That's not where it goes.
All right, let's talk about some fights, man. We talked about getting back to normal a little bit. We are getting back to normal. Nevada State Athletic Commission did earlier this week approve the UFC events. We kind of knew that was going to happen. I mean, the UFC was already, flying fighters in, and Dana had mentioned he felt pretty confident about it. We know that we're getting events May 30th, which is a Saturday, June 6th, next Saturday as well. A couple things I just want to touch on real quick. I mean, if anybody tuned in, you can actually call the meetings if you ever want to listen or whatever. But I mean, the meeting.
Or make a comment.
Yeah, you can make a public comment. They're allowed to do that.
Can't ask a question. It's just public comment.
That's right. They don't have to address it. They can't necessarily.
They say that they won't address it. Yeah. They're just like, you can talk. We just won't. We just won't respond.
We'll listen to it, maybe. But no, it was interesting. The meeting was very short. It was a telephone meeting. Obviously, nobody can meet in person yet. It was very short. It was very quick. But I will say this. From the outside, if you've never seen this thing before, you might be surprised. Like, hold on, man, they didn't even debate anything. They didn't even discuss anything.
Yep.
That's just the way these things work. So I just wanted to warn everybody, like, don't think that there wasn't a lot going on behind the scenes, because it was clear that they had the plan in place. They had the documents in place, and they had done their research. So it's clear that behind the scenes they were working on this all the way until that call on Wednesday. But everybody knew what was going to happen. I will say, though, I was a little bit surprised that none of the commissioners, I don't know, made a statement or, any kind of, maybe one question. Like, I could see somebody going, hey, chairman just wanted to, reaffirm that we're trying to do this in the best, just something to show that, like, hey, it just, they did a good thing, because as soon as the meeting was over, they basically sent out the documents to everybody so that we could all see them. We could all post them online. We could see what they're working on behind the scenes. But as the meeting was unfolding, they're like, well, what do you think about these plans that we've got? It's like, yep, I approve. And we're like, what are the plans? Nobody's even heard what the plans. So if you only heard the initial report or you only heard the call, it seemed a little wild and crazy. But then when you see the documents, Oscar, you and I lived through the Florida thing. Man, what they've laid out here, we've become very familiar with these policies because we had to live by them. Man, what they've laid out here is stricter than what we went through in Florida. And I will say, man, we're quick to criticize. I will say kudos to the Nevada State Athletic Commission for doing it, and kudos, I imagine, to the UFC as well. They said we'll learn from what we do and we'll get better at it. And you could see that the focus of these regulations is really keeping that that quarantine of each fighter intact. Basically, I mean, they're making people stay inside, which, for the most part in Florida, I felt like people did, but that we did see some social media where people were like making their way out of the bubble, which the paperwork we were given said stay inside the bubble, stay inside the hotel, but there were some people that wandered about, and those new policies are really strict in saying, no, stay here, stay inside, stay away from other people.
Yeah, I think in Florida, perhaps maybe not leniency is not the right word, but it was the first time anyone's doing it, right? So it's a bit awkward to tell someone like, hey, you can't leave this hotel. It's a little bit awkward to say that to like Henry Cejudo or any,
Right.
just for to take a name at random. It's a bit awkward to say to someone you can't leave the hotel. I think for this one, they're like, okay, no, now we know you actually can't leave the hotel at all,
Right.
not even to go for a run or anything like that. So definitely from the language we read in the document, I think it seems much stricter to me, even more stricter. And I think in Florida, you can tell the commission's influence, right? Well, so as in Florida, right, there's a limit to how many people were in one room, but it was, I think, a lot more open than in this case, where I think the limit to each room is very strict. And I think if they don't obey it to the letter, the commission, there's a reason why they've only got 2 events scheduled right now,
Yeah, I think so too. And we talked about it on the show, man. We had heard that there was less media that was going to be involved. I still haven't heard exactly how many people are going, so I don't know what the credential number is. I'll try to get that so we can talk about it on the and a half episode from patreon.com/MMA Roadshow. Thank you to everybody that signed up, by the way, man. We've had a lot of new supporters.
You're welcome.
Great.
Yes. Thank you, Oscar. We'll have to make sure to say thank you on this episode.
That's funny. Didn't know. So we don't know how many media are going to be there. What we do know is that the first thing is weigh-ins tomorrow morning. Now, by the time most people listen to this, the weigh-ins will probably already be in the books. As always, we tape this on Thursday night. We release it as soon as we can. But I know a lot of people listen on Friday morning. The weigh-ins are going to have a lot less people there. For instance, Oscar Willis, unfortunately, you found out you will not be there. And it sounds like very, very minimal people. Now, I will say you're allowed to be there, but what they're doing for weigh-ins is at the Apex, as far as we understand, at the Apex, the weigh-ins will be held at the Apex, and there will be a couple of journalists inside. I don't know exactly how many. I do know, thank you, that I was one of them, and I'm appreciative of that. So MMA Junkie, we will have a live stream. We'll have photos. We'll have videos. The rest of the media that's not being allowed in, it will be in a media tent outside. And so that's for the weigh-ins tomorrow. And, of course, only official weigh-ins, no ceremonials, of course, as you would assume. They will do face-offs. And in order to access those weigh-ins, I actually had to go this morning and take another COVID-19 test. Thankfully, it is the throat swab, not the nasal swab, because that nasal swab sucks. But, yeah, so that's the first step they're taking. And I know it's probably a little frustrating, I imagine, on your part that you're not going to be there to be able to be inside for the weigh-ins. But I don't know. To me, it is definitely showing that they're this is an extra step.
Yeah, it's a sign of them being much more strict as well. And I'm sort of I'm waiting to see how it unfolds, because I remember in Jacksonville there was a lot of sort of it's all on the fly, This is their first time doing it, as much as it is ours.
Yeah, you come up with a theory, you come up with a plan, and then you got to execute it and kind of watch it unfold.
Well, I remember when we went to Jacksonville, both of us said like, "Oh, this is not at all how I anticipated it to be." So I'm sort of curious to see how it plays out. But again, it's similar to what I just said a moment ago. The language of it certainly seems to be that there's no messing around at all. There's no leniency here, as you are in your spot, and that's the way it is,
Yeah, and
Is it assigned seats?
probably it was in Jacksonville. I'm
That's what I
assuming
thought-
it will
I
be.
thought I
Yeah, in
remember.
Jacksonville, all of our seats were assigned.
I thought I remember seeing
we
a
came in.
nameplate or something.
Part of the reason I was told for that is they don't want us lining up. Basically, this whole thing is about crowds. We always, as a media, we try to get there early, right? So we get our spot in line. They don't want us lining up, because that's people in a place, congregating basically. So assigned seating, they're hoping that'll kind of alleviate people getting there early and bunching up.
I mean, I always fought against that before, because it was like a reward. Like, how do you? I get it. You want to reward these people with these seats, but it's like, if I'm willing to get there an hour and a half before, like, by God, put me in the front. Don't put me on the third table back just because.
Yeah, but you can't guarantee the people who get there an hour and a half early are going to use that spot correctly. They might just get there because they woke up early.
Listen,
that
it is
day.
something that I always said I thought a journalist association could address, and I'm not picking on them by saying that. But
Like, would you be happy if you had the third table back?
No.
Exactly.
No, I wouldn't.
I mean, I'm happy that we're in that position, that you get one of those ones, but I could feel the plight, and I would feel the anger for some of the other
Well,
ones.
that's why I say, like, it's something maybe a journalist association could come up with a system where, like, look, some metric based on your traffic, your tenure.
What I was. So I was thinking about it today. I was like, tenure, I think, should be valued, even for guys who aren't even sort of. They don't do the video content, stuff like that. These guys have been around for a long time. You have to respect that. I think if you could do a sort of rating system based on tenure, consistent event coverage and then a view count, I think there's probably a way to do it. But then at the same time, once you start doing that, it's sort of, once you start like ranking the media members, I think at the moment that we're all a bit of a
weird.
We're a bit of a traveling circus. We all get on. There's a bit of competition, but nothing too aggressive like you get in boxing, which we spoke about before. I think as soon as you start putting rankings on it, people are going to get a bit cutthroat and nasty. So I'd rather.
Yeah.
As long as I was at the top of those, then yes,
for
sure.
Well, see, and that's why I get it.
Fine, as long as I'm there,
And that's why I get it. And that's why I always never minded the fact when it was like, well, if somebody was grinding and was trying to get there early, I was like, I'm going to get there early because they're not going to beat me. So I wouldn't be upset if somebody beat me there because I knew that they got there early.
Right.
I just hate the fact it was like, fuck, if I try to get to there early and then all of a sudden I get in there and you're placing so-and-so ahead of a spot that I would take.
Yeah.
I can get where some would be frustrated. But I guess it's a no.
Especially if then that person rolls in like halfway through the weigh-ins or something like
that.
Yeah,
which happens, man. It happens.
Yeah.
Again, certainly I've maintained the UFC's way of dealing with media is far superior to boxing because of that very reason. You get guys who show up as the press conference is wrapping up, and then they march past everyone else to get an interview of the fighter on the stage. And it's just like, well, how about fuck you?
Yeah. Oh,
I've been here for 4 hours because I've been here for 4 hours to avoid that very thing from happening.
Yeah.
It's really frustrating.
Yeah.
So that's Friday. Now here's the deal for Saturday, which I find very, very interesting. I think people will be interested in hearing this. So I guess I should say this. So I took a test this morning. The result has to come back negatives before I can go in. If it comes back positive, obviously I can't go into the Apex.
Better not, John.
Yeah, exactly. Now here's the thing: is that
we all got it. That's why that was one good thing when you were like, "Oh, I'm not positive." I was like, "Well, I'm
cool."
By proxy,
that's what I said to you.
I was like, "Yeah, we're pretty good." But you would think that you guys would already be notified by this evening.
Yeah, I'm assuming they will because they'll have the result tonight. Obviously, we're sitting down kind of early in the evening, but I think they'll get it back tonight. But I guess what I was saying is, so I got a test, but then I was able to go and leave, and I went back home and I worked this afternoon, and obviously now I'm over here. But my understanding of that is it's because I will have no access to fighters tomorrow. They want to make sure you're negative, but as far as you being able to leave and go do your own thing, it's because you're not going to be talking to anybody. You're not going to be close to the fighters other than, you'll probably be 8 or 10 feet away or whatever. But for Saturday, this is pretty intriguing. So Saturday, anybody covering the event, we have to report between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. To the host hotel to get a test at that point. And then from there, we go into a room. They'll basically have individual rooms for all of us at the host hotel, and we will isolate until I think the shuttle leaves around 2 p.m. or something like that.
Is the host hotel still a secret? They keeping that a secret?
Well, I don't think it's a secret.
You ain't getting in.
You can't get in. Yeah. So I went in. So I mean, I guess if you want, I mean, it's the same hotel as the Contender Series. So I don't know that they're trying to keep it.
I was gonna joke and say, is it gonna be that crappy little place?
It is. No, it's the same. Yeah, it's the Holiday Inn that hosted the Contender Series. But when you pull up, so when I
big time in UFC.
But and for anybody that doesn't know, it's literally it's a block away from the Apex. It's super close. That's why they're at a Holiday Inn instead of a big strip property, which aren't even open yet. So, but yeah, when you pull up, so I went to go get my test. When you pull up this morning, there's security at the front door, and there's signs on the thing that says closed for a private event, and there's security posted at the front door.
You guys rented the whole damn place.
Yeah, and you have to show your ID and get cleared to walk in. And
they must be loving life right now.
Oh yeah, Holiday Inn's great. Like, they had nobody staying
cookies?
there.
Are they making daily cookies?
I didn't check for the cookies. Those cookies are so good. But they're doing the same system. I didn't use it because obviously I left, but you get a wristband to stay on property and that sort of thing. So they're doing all that, the same thing they did in Florida. So Saturday, we'll get our test, then we go hang out in a room for 6 hours. We've been advised, if you're going to want a snack or anything, bring food because there will be no room service or food available, and you can't leave. You've got to self-isolate right there. So I think
it's called solitary confinement.
Solitary confinement. Self-isolation. I like the self-isolation.
Yeah, it sounds about pleasant. Yeah.
So that's what the system will be. So anybody that covers the show has to get there between 7 and 8, and then we'll take the bus over at 2:15. I think the first fights are usually at 3:30 local time in Vegas. So it's going to be an interesting setup, and I guess it seems to me, again, I think they're trying to do the right thing. Now, somebody could poke holes and say, well, the incubation period is it's that whole thing, right? It's a 2-week incubation period. Unless you're quarantining the people for 2 weeks ahead of time, there's no way to do it. But I just think we're at a point now where it's like, listen, we're gonna do the best we can.
Well,
It's just like we're talking about the bars being open, that sort of thing. Like, I think the idea in society right now is, listen, don't be stupid about this stuff. Do the best you can. Take all the precautions you can, but understand there is no way to completely eradicate this from the planet.
Yeah, I mean, also, if you think about it, because the incubation period was always the thing I thought in Jacksonville was a bit weird, like you could, because you were there for a week, right? You could have suddenly have developed it. But if you think about it, they can test you and get the result back same day. You're not going to develop it in the few hours after that test result. You're not going to develop it suddenly as you're sitting there watching post-fight. I mean, some person's probably going to reply to this and be like, absolutely, yes, you can. But,
especially if you're Tindering and swapping.
It's all what?
If you're swiping right.
It can pass like that? No, but it's all about just like confining the window that you're not possibly positive, right? That's all it's about. It's about like shortening that window. So if we test you at 8, we get the result at 12, and we know you've been in that one room, we know you won't have it. And I think
makes sense.
Yeah, in today's world, I think that's about as good as you're going to get, really. And I mean, it's so funny though. I think the outside perspective on us, John, when we were in Jacksonville, was maybe we were sort of being treated a little bit like, oh, these guys are down here, like they're just part of the crew and stuff like that.
Right.
I don't want to go and sit in a hotel room for 5 hours on my own with my own thoughts. That's very dangerous for me. I'm going to feel like I'm going to be like, oh, it's going to be horrible.
You guys could FaceTime rooms.
Well, I feel like it's going to be like jail. We're passing notes, like chiseling through the brick.
My plan is just go to sleep, dude.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah. I'm just gonna go check
Oh,
in.
could get hammered.
Go to sleep.
Oh no, never mind.
Wait.
Not Friday night. Show up Saturday, still awake from Friday night. Breathe heavily into their face as they test you, like sorry, and then go to sleep. No, okay.
That's a plan there. I think you got an idea.
Do not follow that plan.
Okay. All right, let's talk about the fights that we're going to. Now that you know what the setup is to it, of course, it is UFC on ESPN 9.
Let me be the voice of reason.
Yeah, probably Cold Coffee shut that one down quickly. Probably pretty smart. It is at the UFC Apex, UFC on ESPN 9. Woodley versus Burns, Tyron Woodley versus Gilbert Burns in the main event. It's weird, okay? I mean, it's a fight week, and I will admit, again, virtual media day. Virtual media day today. Sorry, that was professional of me. Virtual media day today. Which is, kind of the new norm, and I think it's going to be that way for a while. I will say, I just don't feel like it's a fight week, man. It's hard, man. It's hard. I don't feel like it's a fight week, and I'm not trying to say, woe is me for my life. I'm just saying, normally I want to sit here and be like, man, we had this awesome interaction with so-and-so today, or so-and-so gave us this little nugget of news, or, so-and-so was not looking good, or, and I just feel like that's the biggest struggle out of all this is the value that we used to have of those interactions of, nuggets of information, whether it be, verbal, nonverbal, physical, whatever it may be. We don't have those anymore. We don't have the pre-fight face-off. Yes, we get the ceremonials, but by then it's almost time anyway.
Everyone's always happy at that point.
Yeah, you don't get the to kind of set the tone early in the week. Like, oh man, I wasn't expecting those two to square off the way they did or whatever. Again, I'm not complaining. I understand that's the reality of the world we live in, but I will say it's kind of an unfortunate, reality of this is that. Once it's fight night, it's fight night. But in the days leading up, I don't have that buzz anymore.
Yeah, well, you figure most of our fight weeks usually we try to set up something early. We're starting usually on Tuesdays. We get those early pre-fight interviews that, sitting down with the guys on Tuesdays before we ever get to the official media stuff on Wednesday. So here we are on Thursday, and whatever that mess of the internet interviews that happened today is just like staring at a blurry image on the screen just is so weird, and it's just sort of off-putting, but it is what it is. But
yeah.
For it to not feel like a fight week, to the fact that we are already Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 3 days into what normally would have been a fight week, and we haven't done squat in person. No. We haven't seen anybody. I haven't had to set up any gear. Haven't had to set up anything. It's just like it doesn't feel right. It doesn't.
The fighters love it.
Yeah, of course.
Fighters love it. I mean, you talk to everybody. Like their weeks are so much easier now. And they have so much, I get it, man. Answering the same damn questions over and over and over, and having so many less obligations. They love it. But I do wonder, I mean, I'm sure at some point, about once we get a vaccine for this thing, once we figure out a way to fight it, sometime next year, I imagine we go back to normal.
Yeah.
But in the interim, it's just, I don't know. It's hard to man. We already used to talk about how hard it was to build buzz for things, right? You know what I mean? Because the world is moving so fast now. That's what I feel, and I understand this is not the biggest star-driven card ever, but I feel like it's tough to get something going.
Well, also, I think I think the people listening to this will relate, because if you look at the business side of it for us, if you look at our numbers, the simple fact of the matter is people don't click on Skype or video interviews like they do in person. That's just across the board. Maybe if you get a good, a big high-profile fight like a 249 post-fight, you might get some clicks, but it's a unanimous feeling apparently that it's less interesting to watch someone on a Skype call than it is in person.
Right.
Probably because you can't get the same emotion. And we spoke in Jacksonville about how they don't have to give you any emotion because they don't even see who they're talking to.
Yeah, they just see in their self. They're seeing.
Well,
and that's why some of them won't even look at the computers a lot of times, because they see their own reflection.
And now they're wearing masks. You're getting even less.
Poor Hannah Cyphers today.
I was going to say, as the president of the Hannah Cyphers Club, how dare you say this is not an exciting fight card?
So it started out. So Tyron Woodley was the first one. He came in. He sat down with his mask on, and I was like,
he set the tone.
I was like, I wonder if this is part of the new protocol. Now it turns out that they were allowed to take their mask off if they wanted to. And by the way, they were sanitizing the area in between each one.
Kudos to Lily. Every single one.
Every single one.
Every single one.
But he said, so you've got the mask on, and like I said, if you're Hannah Cyphers, who's already so quiet anyway, she talks like this because she's nervous. I'm not being mean because I love her. She is amazing. She's a fun fighter, and like her shyness, I find absolutely incredible. I mean, she is hilarious. Like she's so I am fine fighting in a cage under the spotlights in front of 1,000 people, but talking to a camera scares the hell out of me. I find it hilarious. But you literally could barely hear a word
she was
saying,
inaudible.
she's got her mask on.
She was inaudible. It was just like part of so many times during these interviews, I just wanted to virtually push the computer closer because you can't hear him. And with Hannah, it literally, I was like, if I could reach you the screen and somehow turn the microphone up.
Also, if you're used to using a camera and framing, they're all different sizes. So then one person will be
some
fill the screen, and they'll sit back. You're like, no, move
forward,
it.
Some sit back.
Listen to us complaining, but.
Well, that's the thing is, I never want to sound like, we're whining. Like, dude, we still have jobs. I mean, yes, we've been going through furloughs. Of course, Cold Coffee's furloughed this week. I was on furlough last week. So, I mean, I get it. Like, we've all been impacted, but we're still fortunate to have jobs. But, I never want to sound like whining or complaining, and I'm definitely not whining or complaining. I'm just saying, it's these little side things that you never thought of where it's like, hey, man, we got to do this, and here's the solution. And then you realize, yes, that is the right solution, but it has consequences you didn't think of.
I think when the virtual media days first started, I think yourself and even I could understand to some degree, there's a positivity in there for us. It's less strenuous work. The hustle and bustle of media it's for me the most fun, but also the most stressful part of a fight week by far, especially if it's a big card with Connor on it or whatever, Jones on it or something like that. It gets a bit messy. But having seen them in action, it's like, okay, Maybe not keep these.
These have run their course, and I don't know what the solution is. I mean, I don't know that we can. I mean, I guess I hope maybe after these first two, and you talked about before we started. I mean, I guess most of the nation is in these kind of phases or whatever, and once we get to phase 3 or whatever, hopefully there comes a point where at least we could go to the host hotel, take a test,
pre-fight press conferences,
and do so, whether it be a press conference, whether it be a scrum where we're all apart, but the equipment is 6 feet away and it's sanitized. I don't know. I hope we can get to, because again, I don't think we're going to get back to normal until we have a vaccine or a treatment for this thing. But hopefully we can figure out something from where we are. Because as a fan, I just got to imagine as a fan. I mean, first of all, I know that some bands are so hardcore, man. They go to Junkie, and then they go to Fighting, and then they go to. Yeah. You know what I mean? They go wherever.
Mac
Mac Live. Yeah, sure they do. They bounce around a little bit, and they see the different interviews. You have some pretty good interviews, man. I'll say you go a different route, and I'm sure they want to see all the different stuff. Now we all have the same thing, and it's crappy at that. So I gotta imagine as a fan, thinking about the days when I used to be thinking about fights, and I want to watch what are people saying, what are people doing. Man, you click on that stuff. I mean, hey, we got it there for you. At least it's something. But I gotta feel like for a fan, it's just like wholly unfulfilling.
Yeah, it's pushing it to the limit of what people I think are willing. I think it was one thing when it was the first one where like, oh, okay, we got to do with what we got to do. But at this point, it's starting to get to the point where it's like, we got to have a better solution or just fix the internet or something. Like, why, after so many events, can't we get a decent image, a decent somewhat of a picture? And it's just frustrating because you watch it and it's tiring on the eyes. And, after a while, you're just like, but that could be partially because we're watching every single one of them.
That's true.
And it just gets, and the media days now are lasting, like 3 hours because they take time in between these fighters. They're staring at a blurry image for 3 hours. Literally, by the end of it, I just want to jab my eyes out because I can't tell if it's allergies or it's just watching a blurry screen. But I feel like my eyes are currently just like my eyes are watering after watching this stuff. But I think there's gonna get to a point, I think, where people are gonna get over the fact that they're thankful that they're seeing stuff because they're just gonna want something better because we're so used to it. I mean, I think all of us pride ourselves upon making sure that the color looks good, make sure your composition looks good. You want to get that clear image.
Make sure it's pointed the right way.
Make sure you're pointing the right way. Make sure your audio is good. All these things that, we got to these positions for doing, and then now it's just like we're rushing 10 miles back the other direction and just being, well, just deal with it because it's what you have, and it gets a bit frustrating, but when I was thinking about it just popped in my head because you were like, oh, if there's a way to separate. Imagine in the UFC, in the UFC headquarters, they got the media room and then they got the workout room. They have that giant window into the media room.
With the
just
glass.
Put the fighter on the other side of the glass. Put all the media in the media room.
Amazing.
And then just put like some mics on one side and put a mic stand on the other, and we would literally have inches of glass.
So we'd all sit 6 feet apart in the media room.
But the funny thing is, and this is the world we're living in, is it's all optics, right? It like essentially in same with Florida. If we've all been tested and we're all negative, surely we're in our own little bubble of the old world, and we shouldn't care. But it's all optics.
Well, and I started thinking too, like now you start talking about like the 2-week incubation period and that sort of thing, right? But I mean, like you and I have a 2-week history of testing now. You know what I mean? We've been tested multiple times.
Got tested when we got back from
Jacksonville.
Yeah,
so we were tested there, tested when we back. But it's the whole damn thing of, well, you could test and then get it 5 minutes later. It's like, but I'm not interacting with people.
Yeah.
It's just
this guy.
Yeah.
you all probably have the herpes after this one.
Yeah, I'm not worried about catching coronavirus when I come over here, bro.
I wonder what the smell on the microphone
all
was.
kinds of other stuff.
But it's frustrating, and I think for all three of us as well, not that we're control freaks, but certainly when the control is taken out of our hands and you're watching a laptop screen, you're like, fuck, man. I just wait.
Freaks now that you mention it. We really are kind of control
I
freaks.
love the people I work with, but when I have to mess with some of the stuff they shoot and do whatever, I literally want to choke myself out. But
you
I
do
love
that.
them.
You do that late at night anyway. You know?
I do quite often, and during the day.
Well, you're in lockdown. What are you going to do?
But yeah, it's funny you say we're just a bit of control freaks, just a little bit. I look forward to the days, and I feel like we're getting to that point where someday down the line we're all going to look back and laugh at all the stuff that we're bitching and moaning about. I hope so. I'm hopeful for that future. But I was hoping really with some of these events that they would start pushing in that direction, and it doesn't sound like it from at least this first one or even the second one that it's going to start getting more. It seems like they're inputting, from what you said, putting more restrictions than what Jacksonville. So I can see where Jacksonville, they're kind of looking back at it, like it was a petri dish, and then looking to do what was right, give less things for people to pick at, which I agree that maybe something should have been done better, but I just want to see the point where they're going to start pushing forward, and it feels right now they're still pulling in a pull-back phase for some of these things. So here we are having multiple events in Vegas, but it sounds like people are going to have even less.
But I think you have to pull back because of the political climate. I think Nevada, in order to get approved here, you had to pull back even more.
Yeah.
I don't think the UFC really wants to pull back more. I just feel like they felt like they had to pull back more in order to get the approval. And then, as you said, hopefully, they get a couple events in the books, and then they can, ease restrictions.
I would wager Dana would probably be like, get tested at the beginning of the week, and if you're negative, we pretend it doesn't exist.
Right.
I would wager he'd be that comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Well, he gets tested all the time, for what it's worth. But certainly, I think we've said on this before, the governor in Nevada has been very, very strict on lockdowns, been very, very slow to reopen, been very, very conscious of the health stuff, and I think the commission is certainly getting their cues from him.
Absolutely.
You know, so
it's a governor appointed
Yeah,
position.
yeah.
in the athletic commission.
Yeah, if they don't pay attention, he could easily. I thought that. Speaking of, I thought people were being replaced. I thought Bennett was done.
There were a lot of people that said that.
yeah, I thought, wasn't he? Was that the end of 2019?
Yeah,
Supposedly.
there were a lot of people that thought he was out. But
He's going to hear this and be like, "You."
I'm supposed to talk to him next week. I'll ask him, like, bro, I thought you were getting kicked out.
Can you ask him to like
Damn.
lean up on the media stuff?
Let
Just-
him go. Let him go. All right, let's talk about the fights
As
themselves.
long as he doesn't start calling us wimps.
Nah, who would do that?
The bald guy. The bald guy. It's such a great tweet. Why did Ali Abdelaziz say the bald guy was right?
Because he was talking about himself and Dana.
Too funny. All right, Tyron Woodley versus Gilbert Burns. Certainly the star attraction here on this card. I'm intrigued by this fight, and I've said it, a couple times in the lead up to this, talking to some different people. I do not believe this is the number one contender fight. I do not believe that would be fair. I understand the welterweight division is a bit of a mess right now, and I really, to be honest with you, don't understand exactly what's going on at welterweight. You got Kamaru Usman, who's still unbooked. We thought it was going to be the Masvidal fight. The Masvidal fight hasn't been booked yet. You got Covington leaving American Top Team, and then Abe Kyle was out there saying he always fulfills a promise. And they're talking about a rematch with Nate Diaz. Of course, he did say I would offer him a rematch. He said it in the cage. No disrespect to those guys, because I love Masvidal and I love Diaz, and I want to watch them fight anybody. I just don't really want to watch them fight each other again. I feel like we already saw it, especially when there's so many intriguing matchups going on right now. Covington leaving makes me think that Covington Masvidal could at least be a possibility. I mean, that was the whole thing, right? Like, there's not supposed to be tension, and then there was, and maybe they're fighting each other. I don't know exactly what's happening. I think it's a crime. I understand that I'm probably in the minority here, that a lot of people feel like Edwards is the left out guy and they don't care about him. You look at what he's done, you look at the winning streak he's put together, and you look at the fact that his last loss was to Usman. I feel like it writes itself there. I mean, I feel like that's a good fight, especially right now when you're not worried about live gates, you're not worried about selling tickets. I mean, why not put it on now? So I don't know. It's such a mess right now at welterweight, and there's so many different scenarios at welterweight. But I guess I throw that all out there just to say that I've seen some people saying, "Hey man, could Tyron sneak in a little bit? Could Gilbert on the hot streak sneak in?" And to me, I don't think either one of these guys is deserving of a title shot right now. And I mean no disrespect to the guy. I just feel like there's a lot of names ahead right now. But I am intrigued by the fight because there's so many question marks around Tyron Woodley. A former title holder and a great title holder at that, but didn't look good last time out, and it's been a year since then. Meanwhile, Gilbert Burns tearing up the scene, amazing since he moved up to 170. Has fought in this environment. He fought down in Brazil, so he's fought with no crowd. He seems to be the new flavor. I'm very intrigued because it's a crossroads fight. So I'm not intrigued by the stakes, and I don't like talking about is this a number one contender fight because I don't believe it is, but I'm intrigued by the fight itself.
Well, the funny thing is I would completely agree with you that this isn't a number one contender fight, nor should it be. But with, and all due respect, guys, with the way that Usman, Masvidal, and Covington are all behaving right now, if someone negotiates the wrong way, they could turn to Woodley and be like, he can go right in there.
So true.
So it's funny that welterweight is always seems to be the one where people sort of chirp up. I actually think Leon, like you said, Leon's the one who's been hard done by the most. He was meant to get this Woodley fight, and now it's been taken away from him. You sort of get the feeling if Woodley wins, Edwards will somehow drop down the pack. I think, to be honest, if you look at the weird thing about 170 is the fights actually book themselves.
Right.
Like, Usman should fight Masvidal. I think Covington should fight Leon Edwards.
That'd be great.
And then I think it's funny that Nate's suddenly on the cards. It's like, has anyone told Nate that? Because I get the impression Nate's probably somewhere very unaware that Masvidal's fighting him in 2 months. I think that might be a negotiation figure. But then do Nate Conor. Conor hasn't got an opponent. Like those three fights seem to be the easiest to book for me. And yet, someone wants more money. No, he wants more money. I'm asking. It's a story we've seen before with a lot of these guys. But I think I don't think this is a number one contender fight. I do think it's interesting to see where Tyron's at. He's talking a big game. He's saying his loss has rejuvenated him. It's brought him on. But I remember one of the big criticisms about him losing to Usman was, the rap album, was that distracting him and stuff like that. And then he's just appeared on the Titan games with The Rock, and it's sort of like, well, are we seeing history repeat itself? I think if Tyron wins this fight, realistically, he's in exactly the same space as he is last week.
Yes.
I don't think it's going to propel him anyway. The logical fight for him would then be Leon or
Yes.
Covington if
Yes.
Covington would take that fight. Whereas if Burns wins, okay, now Woodley is, sorry to say, pretty much out of it at that point. He's out of the talk of that sort of top tier, and then you can sort of look at which one of the top 4 can we get to accept this fight with Gilbert.
So crazy. I mean, Masvidal is the clear number one.
It's so sad like that because if Gilbert Burns beats
None of them want to
the
fight
number one
Leon.
contender, yeah, he's not going to get the title shot after that. If anything, I feel like it's trying to give Gilbert has just really sort of come. I don't want to say come of age, but he just really has been shining lately. He's
put himself
saying
in
the
the
right
spotlight.
things. He's doing all the right things. I feel like this is more for his benefit, but unfortunately, I still feel like if he wins this fight, they're going to make him fight another one of the top 5
easy.
guys.
Yeah, he'd have to.
And then that would be maybe the official contender fight, So I kind of feel
But
bad.
even
for
then,
him.
it probably wouldn't be because
I think
Maybe not.
Even if he fought Leon Edwards, you could say whoever wins that, well, you're still behind Colby or you're still behind, Nate. Like if Nate beat Masvidal, then he's fighting Usman. It's just
That would be really, really shitty if they did something like that.
Oh, they
'Cause
never would.
I feel like if for Burns, yeah, right, they would never do such a thing. You have to feel that if Burns gets a win or even an impressive win, I would say if he had just an outstanding, just somehow pulls out some round 1 crazy submission or knockout that would cause Dana to say, okay, this has to be the fight to happen. I feel like he has to have one more fight, but that fight, in my mind, should be the number 1 contender fight.
I think Burns can take a big leap. Like I said, I don't think any of us believe he can be a number 1 contender, but Burns can take a big leap here because, look, if he does win, and I'll tip my hand, I pick Burns going into this, right, just because of the question marks around Woodley. If Burns wins, I don't see him winning over the course of 5 rounds.
No, I think he'll finish.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's going to be a nasty finish early, whether it be a impressive submission or a big knockout or something like that. It's going to be round 1, round 2. I don't think he wins this thing late. So I think he could take a big leap up.
Do you know what I think about the welterweight division? It actually reminds me of the lightweight division over the past few years, where you got so many popular fighters. You got Khabib, you got Conor, you got Gaethje. That someone like Tony, who didn't get popular until very recently, like Leon Edwards, is looking on the outside and he gets his shot, and then someone comes in and gets his shot.
It's a good
comparison. Just leapfrog
it's just
over it.
completely.
It's a good comparison, and it's funny because Conor, obviously biggest star in the sport, he can
and he's potentially about to do this.
Yeah, and he's talking about going to 170 or 186 points or what was that? 170.
176.37.
By the way, that was the greatest thing ever that Anderson Silva put 176.37 because I thought Nolan King because we're short right now. We're running a short staff, so Nolan was running an editorship by himself, which he's done a great job for us, but he's still relatively new. And I thought, had not seen Anderson Silva's original post, that Anderson had probably posted something in kilograms. He went and did the conversion and then put the decimal points, which nobody would ever do. And I was like, damn it, like why did he do this? And then I saw the original post and like Anderson put that. Anyway, long tangent there, but I thought that was hilarious. And Nolan had an awesome headline because he put the decimal points in there. Like that is phenomenal. But yeah, I mean, at lightweight, you said it. I mean, Conor, it was always this damn thing. Like, well, hey, you're number 1 contender. Unless Conor wants to fight. Yeah. And now at welterweight, you got 2 of those guys because you got Masvidal, which I guess it's not fair to say that Masvidal because he probably is
the number 1
contender.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe it's not fair to say it, but you got Nate that can jump in there and screw things up all of a sudden.
Colby can jump in there as well. Like the funny thing about unlike lightweight, which lightweight was congested because none of them could get their schedules sort of synced up. Welterweight feels just like. It's so weird that they're negotiating so hard because there's so many other people that they could throw in there. But then, ironically enough, that other person always negotiates too hard as well.
I cannot believe we haven't moved forward further in the welterweight division.
Yeah, like Masvidal Usman is, Dana said that's the International Fight Week headliner when they had their little thing in Miami. So you'd think from then they would have done it. Then apparently Usman negotiates too hard. So I'm surprised they haven't turned to Usman and said, well, we'll make Colby Masvidal for this title. Don't think we won't. And then Masvidal negotiates too hard, so then they can say, well, we'll do the rematch with Colby. But then Colby, it's all 3 of them.
It's frustrating. Hopefully we get something worked out.
And by the way, they all deserve as much money as they can get.
Of course, yeah.
But it's just the weird trifecta of it all.
It's frustrating. All right, let's do this because you talked about the way Woodley was talking, and again, we don't have any, original audio or anything like that. But I did think I would share a few minutes from the media day. At least I went through and adjusted the levels and everything.
That's good of you.
Yeah, because that's another thing. The audio levels are all jacked up. I don't know. No more complaints. No more complaints. Here is what Tyron Woodley had to say earlier today at Virtual Media Day.
We will kick off the first question with Danny Segura. Danny, please go ahead.
It's been a long road for you to get to this moment. Now that it's finally here, after all the hectic situation with COVID-19 and the postponement and everything, how good does it feel to finally be in fight week?
It feels great. I mean, everything happens for a reason. I think it was a blessing in disguise. I had a chance to really just grow as a fighter, mentally get myself prepared to fight, and added some new wrinkles to my game. And now it's a more prepared, more focused Tyron Woodley. I think that's a fighter that the fans deserve to see.
Yeah, it's interesting times in your division right now. It seems the title picture is not all that clear. We thought that Usman was going to face Masvidal, but it seems that's not really working out at the moment. Do you think a win on Saturday could put you right in there, and maybe you're the one that challenges Usman next?
I think just winning in dominant fashion is going to set up a lot of wins for me. It could be a fight against Usman. It could be anything, but I think just going out there Saturday and focusing on that first and not looking so far down the road is what's going to help me out in this situation.
Yeah, and obviously you were a very dominant champion. Can you explain what kind of happened in your last fight with Usman where you lost, and have you made any changes or any adjustments since that bout?
No, I really can't explain what happened, so I didn't really have to make adjustments because I just wasn't in my body that night. So I haven't really watched the fight, haven't really focused too much on it, just focus on moving forward from it, and that's what I'm doing right now.
When you say you weren't really there, like, I guess if you can elaborate on that feeling, like what exactly were you feeling when you were?
It's kind of hard to elaborate. You have to just be in that moment. You have to be a fighter to understand. Every fighter's had those fights where they just felt like they weren't in their own body, and it's very difficult to explain. So just know that I'm prepared, I'm focused, and I'm ready to fight.
Yeah, and I recently spoke to Burns, and he said that basically speaking on that performance, he said basically that you're no longer the beast that you used to be. Do you think people are putting too much stock on that performance?
Yeah, I just don't really care what anybody say. I'm out to say anything. Gilbert Burns is saying what he thinks you guys want to hear, as well as many fighters. That's my issue with the division right now. Fighters are not being themselves. Fighters are being what they think the fans want to see, what they think Dana wants to see, what they think the UFC sees as a fighter. I'll fight anybody, anywhere, anytime. And that's great if you really do that. But he'll see Saturday.
And we'll take the next question from Jeff Wagenheim with ESPN. Jeff, please go ahead.
Just in general, you're in Vegas. The fight capital of the world is back in business. What are your thoughts about that? About the sport was on kind of on a pause and without a home, and now the UFC and the sport of MMA is back in the fight capital. What are your thoughts?
I just was being positive about everything. I think God has sovereign rule over everything, and I just been really positive about all the things and just trusting myself and doing everything to be safe and precautious, to keep myself away from certain people, to only train with a certain group of people, and just everybody being respectful of the fact that if one of us tests positive for COVID-19, none of us make money, none of us fight. So I think the UFC themselves have done a great job. From what I've seen and what I've experienced so far this fight week, they've taken every precaution to make sure that we are safe. And that means a lot to me and it means a lot to the fighter. So when I get on the octagon, I'm not really going to think about it. It's less distractive. It's less demands. It's less media face-to-face. There's more time to rest and focus on the fight and train and cut your weight.
And our next question will come from Gabriel Pangalangan with Dojo Drifter. Gabriel, please go ahead.
Hey, Tyrone. So the last year has been a busy one for you. You were in Thailand, you released an album, you were on the Titan Games. What was this year about for you? Was it getting rid of distractions? Or what was it all about for you?
Just growing and dealing with problems. I had to deal with the fact that I lost my belt. And it was something I didn't expect to happen. I expect to retire, as a UFC champion after, trying to chase down a record of Georges St. Pierre. And, sometimes you get hit with someone blocks and you got to be able to evolve from that. So for me, it was just basically reprioritizing my life and putting myself back in position where I can be the dominant champion I once was. And it was a lot of refocusing and a lot of, getting rid of things that didn't belong in my circle. And, whether it was people, whether it was things that I was doing, time I went to sleep, what I was eating, how I was training. And I just got back to the basics. So now I'm the Tyron Woodley that, the fighters should be scared of and the fans should be excited to watch fight.
That's awesome. And then after the last pay-per-view was UFC 249, some people attributed Tony Ferguson's loss to having too lengthy a camp. But you yourself, you've had 2 camps already, one for London and now this one in Vegas. Was having two camps a concern for you? And how did you make any adjustments to make sure you wouldn't be overworked?
Tony Ferguson's loss wasn't due to two camps. It was due to his game plan. It was due to his, he's tough. He's too tough for himself sometimes. And you got to have a plan. You got to have the ability to call audibles out there on a field, as you would say. So he didn't do that. You can't just stand in front of Gaethje and you hear those punches just hitting him. With no audience, it makes a lot of noise. So you can just imagine what it felt like. So he needed to switch things up, and he didn't do that. I don't know. I can't vouch for his training camp. I wasn't there. I don't know what he did, but I know each time we got the training camp or the date pushed back, then I elevated the training, because that means that if you elevate the training and when you go to tapering into the rest stage, you should compete at a higher level. So I just adjust my training camp to peak, and now I'm set to peak on Saturday.
Okay, we will move on, and we're going to have Mike Heck. Mike, if you are ready, please ask a question.
Gilbert's had a lot to say about the road to getting this fight booked, that you didn't think he was a big enough name. You turned it down 3 different times. He's lost respect for you, and that you really didn't have a choice but to take this fight. At this point in your career, do you even pay attention to what people are saying about you? Do you need any extra locker room material at all?
No, I don't. And I don't pay attention to it because, one, I'm out to say anything. Two, at the point, they're doing what they have to do. I didn't ask to fight Gilbert. I asked to fight Leon. I didn't ask to fight Kobe. I didn't ask to fight Usman, Till, or none of those guys. Those guys asked to fight me. I was the guy. I was the person that was at the top of the food chain, and they wanted to fight me, and they should. Because when I was at their level, when I was at a position where I wanted to get the opportunity, that's what I had to do. The way that they're doing it is really corny, but I was able to do that with respect. When I wanted to fight Carlos Condit, I said, nobody want to fight him, I'll fight him. I'll step up to the challenge. I never had to disrespect him. I never had to talk bad about him. I'm still a fan. Carlos Condit may be my favorite welterweight to watch, even over George St. Pierre, just because he used his abilities and maximized every single time. He always gave us 100% effort and win, lose, or draw. He was exciting to watch fight, and he was a humble guy behind stage. So I gave him respect the entire time through. And I got to be real. Usman gave me respect as well. I really don't have an issue with him. But some of these other guys are just, you're doing too much. You're not even yourself. It doesn't even resonate well with the fans. And that's the reason why you don't have the following you should have. That's the reason why you haven't gotten the fights in the past. And this, for these guys, is just really a blessing in disguise, because the opportunity for international fight to happen at this exact moment is not really there. And people yelling and talking about they're fighting anybody, anywhere, anytime, that's going to help them right now, because at this point, it's going to be a position where they, may have those opportunities. So I'm looking for a performance. I really don't care. I don't need Gilbert to respect me. I'm respected by the world for what I've done.
And then last thing for me, just to add to what you just said, is just getting a win enough for you on Saturday, or does this need to sort of pose as a reminder that you were the guy who won and defended a world title several times and finished a lot of guys on the way up? Does this need to serve as a reminder to all of those people who may be doubting you?
I mean, for the rest of my career, just winning is never going to be enough anymore. I made that commitment to myself. I made that commitment to my coach and to my family, that if I'm out there, you're going to get maximum effort, you're going to get maximum performance. And I'm going to go out there and I'm going to send messages every single time I fight. It's not just because it's Gilbert. It's not because I lost my last fight. It's not because I won a title shot. It's because I'm capable of it. And if you're capable of it and you don't do it, then what are you out there for? So I'm going out there every single fight for the rest of my career, and I'm going to let everybody know that I'm the best.
All right, that was Tyron Woodley at Virtual Media Day. Shout out to the UFC for making that happen. I appreciate what they're doing, but I missed the media day so much. Sorry if it was a little garbled there. I boosted the level, but Tyron did have on a mask the whole time. Listen, interesting. He admits he wasn't there at the last fight. I think we all kind of know that, but for him to admit that is interesting. And I think his explanation, maybe a little bit more, would have been nice. But I understand he's basically just saying that he's having an off night. But I kind of like the Tyron Woodley with a chip on his shoulder. Even though I told you guys earlier, I'm leaning towards Gilbert Burns. I feel like when Tyron's kind of like backed into a corner or feels like he's got something to prove, like that's a more dangerous Tyron.
That's why I went with Tyron on this one.
Yeah.
I think Gilbert is probably one of the nicest guys that you can ever meet, and I think he's on such this crazy rise right now. Maybe it's because I feel like, man, we're seeing the dude just kill it in submission, grappling, all this other stuff. He's just got all this momentum. But I do feel that right now Woodley understands that if he loses this match, he's not going to get back to the title fight. Again, probably. And I hate saying that because he's still so talented and he still is so.
But we just rattled off names.
He's
hardly a young man. He's been doing this for 20 years now, or 10 years.
He's got a family. He's not. I don't want to say getting on in age because he's probably 10 years younger than me. But you just feel that with what he's done, he should be happy with what he's accomplished in his career. But I just feel losing to a guy that could be perceived as either number 6 according to UFC rankings. If my web browser was working right, I would tell you what MMA Junkie has him ranked at. I just feel like it's going to be a super tough road, and then let alone the distances and the times that some of these fights are happening. I just don't see him getting back to that welterweight title.
Well, also, I think when Woodley dropped the title to Kamaru with that performance as well, it's no secret, like, he wasn't exactly their favourite champion that they had in their roster, do you know what I mean? So I think when he lost, I was like, well, that's the last title fight he'll ever get. And I think the only way Woodley gets another title fight is if he starches
a couple people.
Like Burns, Leon, then you're back, and gets a real following. But there's a lot on Tyron this fight. You know, like, all the talk he's saying is exactly what you want to hear, but he better be able to back it up, you know?
And just thinking back and watching that, remembering that fight, and, you know, granted, it's been a little bit of time, but I just remember feeling that Usman was so, I don't want to say if dominant is the right word. I just feel that if it got back to that and it did happen to be a matchup, I don't see it going a different route. I see it being the same one. I just think Usman, how he's fighting right now, has Woodley's number, and I would rather, but I just feel that even if everything worked out for him and he was able to get back there, I just feel that Usman's the younger, newer, better version than what Tyron brought to the table.
I just remember a lot of times in that fight, I think by the third round I was like, well, he's going to lose his title on a drubbing decision. You could just tell he was not.
There was nothing.
He was not. I was like, you know, he's not even throwing a big right hand to try and catch him. He wasn't doing anything.
It was like he'd already.
It's like
giving up isn't the right.
No, he just completely froze. He just and I could see in him, like, that's just like, I'm not feeling it today, you know, and I do think he'd perform a lot better, but I think skill set wise, I mean, Kamaru is just relentless, you know.
Yeah.
So I agree with you that maybe it's just the old school meets new school kind of vibe, but I would understand why Woodley wants that fight back, you know.
Yeah, of course.
You know, like to lose your title is one thing.
It's clear he was flat that night. I mean, take nothing away from Usman, man. That was a great performance.
Yeah.
But it's clear there was something not right.
I wouldn't go as far as to say Woodley lost, Kamaru didn't win, if you know that old saying.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't go as far as to say that.
I
wouldn't go as far as to say that. But, you know, like, he made it easy for him to win.
It didn't seem like he had his best stuff, basically,
you know,
right? You know what I mean? Like,
you were waiting for excuses. You're like, was he sick?
Yeah.
It wasn't the Woodley that we thought we would see.
I think that's why I said I'm stressing, you know, lifestyle changes, not just, you know, not just focus, not just a fight. I'm stressing lifestyle changes.
Yeah. And in that moment, you kind of want to see what the version 2.0 would be for that fight. Mm-hmm. Right now, I would have to really see something in this fight to show me that there is some new wrinkles to the game.
A Robbie Lawler finish, you know, that sort of like big starch-out knockout. I
mean, that's the thing. He has the power, but you never saw it in that fight against Usman. Maybe he just never got a shot off, or he never got a chance. But I remember thinking that the whole time. We were like, "Where's the power? Where's the throws?"
It's funny because if you think Usman's his last fight and he looked so terrible, the fight before that against Till, he looked great. He looked like a champion.
Yeah.
But then you think, well, Till actually looked like dog shit that night as well. I don't think he threw a punch himself. So you kind of like go, And then you think before that, you know, the last great performance Woodley had was probably the first fight against Stephen Thompson. So he was always a bit of a weird one to what, you know, he really got away from this murderous knockout power.
That's why I said, you know,
he's a weird dude.
I think if Tyron executes at if he's at 100%, if he is vintage 100%, I think he wins this fight. But to me, that's why I went ahead and picked Gilbert, because I said, look, there's so many question marks around Tyron. I'm playing the hot hand.
I wonder if Tyron's like he's almost too cerebral for his own good. If that makes sense. You know, someone like John, who's got long reach and he's a built for distance, not necessarily for like just explosive knockout power. It's in his interest to be smarter and stuff like that. But I wonder if Tyrant outthinks himself sometimes, where he actually could be like, if I hit him with this right hand, he's going down. You know, he never just.
You know, the biggest case of that I always thought was Jake Ellenberger, a guy that had like incredible physical tools, and then one day started to get like really. Like you could tell he was thinking about stuff instead of just doing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And when you start doing that, it's like it changes a little bit. So, dude, crossroads fight. That's why I'm so intrigued by it. All right, let's hear the flip side of the coin. Gilbert Burns, completely different attitude, as you said. One of the nicest guys, friendly guy who's in good spirits, as you would expect. But he understands what's at stake here, man. And Kokoff, you said it right, man. This dude is, man, he has taken advantage of his time in the spotlight, man. He has worked himself into this. He's having great performances in the cage, but then he's on social media every week going, give me that fight, I'll take that one. He's, you know, and he's meaning it, man. He's like, dude, I will sign it, not just
he's not being cringy about it.
No, just give me the fight. I'll take that. Hey, got a spot? I'll take that one. Over there? I'll take that one too. So the big moment for Gilbert Burns, Dorino, a good dude going up against his biggest test to date. Here's what he had to say earlier today.
Welcome to the number 6 ranked UFC welterweight contender in the world, Gilbert Burns. Gilbert, thank you for the time today, sir.
Yeah, for sure.
And we will take the next question from Jim Barcelona with the Miami Herald. Jim, please go ahead.
Gilbert, what does this fight mean to you? Having UFC back in Las Vegas, and also, I mean, main eventing this big card as well. How do you just put it all in perspective?
Yeah, it means a lot. It's a huge opportunity to face a former champ right after his first loss. Like he just lost the belt. And I'm here. I'm just putting in the work. I'm getting after, calling everyone out. UFC, give me the shot. I'm just happy with this opportunity, and I'm going to give everything I have to earn that spot to big title on Saturday. And I'm just super excited, happy with the opportunity, but focus on what I have to do.
What do you think it will be like competing with no crowd? And are you just so focused on the fight when you're in there that you really put out the crowd anyway?
I fought already no crowd in Brazil. That was the first fight with no crowd, the UFC Brasilia, when I beat Damian Maia. And I'm getting used to it. Then I cornered Vicente Luque on the UFC Jacksonville. I'm kind of okay now. We're not, for sure we missed the crowd, but I've been there before, you know.
And we will take the next question from Cassandra Cusino with Las Vegas Sports Biz. Cassandra, please go ahead.
Hi there. Just wanted a quick question about fighting in the Apex. Your brother actually earned his UFC contract there at the Apex. How excited are you to come back and earn a victory this time for the family to go 2-0 there?
Yeah, I was super excited. I supposed to come here with my brother, but I got a short notice in the UFC Uruguay on the same week that he fought here on the Contender Series. So, but today I give a tour on the Apex, and the facility is amazing, and I can't wait to make 2-0 for the Burns family at the Apex.
So this training camp, you mentioned that you've talked to some of Woodley's previous opponents, notably Kamaru Usman. What did he tell you exactly that you think you can use this weekend?
A lot of things. He said like he made him very uncomfortable since the beginning. He felt he was strong on the early rounds, but then it wasn't that strong to the later rounds. A little bit aggressive, but he said, I have good eyes. We train a lot. And he said, I can see a lot of things coming. He's not going to be that quick that like, sometimes the guy hits you so quick that you're like, oh, like, man, he just hit me. Like, but he said, no, you can see. You just build the good eyes, keep feinting, moving. He gave me a lot of good insights on Tyron Woodley.
That's awesome. And Woodley has said that he intends to take you into deep water. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think he'll get to do that? And how has your training been for a 5-rounder?
I love it. And I can't wait to be on the deep waters. I can't wait. I trained my whole life for that, since the jiu-jitsu here with MMA, UFC, and I can't wait. Let's go. Let's see who's going to draw first.
Oh, wait. You're not feeling a lot. You seem really relaxed. Do you think there's less pressure on you, despite this being the bigger fight of your career? Do you think there's more pressure on Woodley?
He's always pressure. I'm not going to lie. I'm nervous, a little nervous that I'm going to do. That I'm going to fight. I'm not, I'm doing the main event. I'm not biting to that. But you always nervous, but it's all about control. Everyone get nervous. Why should I think, oh, I'm nervous? No, everyone's nervous. And it's getting normal. I fought like how long ago? March 14. How long ago was that? Like I don't know, 2 months, 3 months. So I'm getting more at home with the UFC, with the fights, and I feel comfortable. That's what I like to do. I'd rather be here than at home. I'd rather be right here, right now, talking to you guys about my fight, making weight tonight, weigh-ins tomorrow, face off, relax, fight. That's where I'd rather be here than if I want to be here on Hawaii, you want to be here in Brazil. I want to be here. I want to fight. That's what I like to do. That's what I love to do. That's what I put all my energy. And I can't wait to Saturday night. I'm that excited, and I excited to the opponent too. I want to face the former champ, see how it feels like. Oh, he's very strong. Let's see how strong he is. Oh, he's gonna come forward. Let's see how he's gonna come forward. And I'm just gonna enjoy this experience, and I believe I'm gonna beat Tyron this Saturday night.
All right, that was Durinho. Big main event in the welterweight division. Listen, I mean, the guy's got enthusiasm. He sees what's at hand. He sees the opportunity in front of him. It's a big moment for him. So, should say, by the way, if you like what you're hearing, and I don't see why you wouldn't. I mean, a couple of great guys like us just sitting around having a frosty beverage, talking
cold
some MMA.
coffee, got hot tea.
Come on, man.
Cold beer.
If you like what you listen to, make sure that you're logged into Apple Podcasts or wherever you do get your podcasts. Make sure you just take a second to give us a little feedback. If you can rate us, we would appreciate that. 5 stars would be awesome. That helps us get noticed. If you can leave some feedback, review us as well, we'd definitely appreciate that also. Or if you want to take it to the next level, take it on over to patreon.com/the MMA Roadshow. That is the exclusive home of the and a half episodes where we recap every single event, have a little post-fight coverage, and we will continue to do that through these UFC Apex shows. We bring some other content for you there as well, like a John Jones interview. The occasional random John Jones interview will just pop up there. We'll get into that later. It was a crazy week last week. I was on furlough, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But shout out to everybody. We had a lot of new additions this past week. Really cool people in the journalism community were reaching out. And I'll let them remain nameless, but there were a handful of people in the journalism community that signed up to support.
Really?
Yeah, and I thought that was so cool, man. I thought that was really nice. So I'll let them remain nameless because I think they were just showing some brotherly love and not looking for any clout or anything like that.
I thought I was so special.
But it was cool, man. I mean, Oscar Willis, we called you out, dog.
Yeah.
we know you weren't giving any love. We know you weren't trying to support the cause.
I just want to hear myself.
You just wanted to hear yourself talk. We knew that. But we got a couple of new ones. iCar? Y-Car?
Yeah. E-Car.
E-Car? Shout out to iCar, Y-Car. What are you going to go with? E-Car?
E-Car.
E-Car. All right, shout out to E-Car. Frederick Hellstrom. Shout out to you, my friend.
Frederick.
Brian McMahon. Captain Jack Sparrow, by the way. That one meant a lot to me. Captain Jack Sparrow signing up. John Paul Cartledge as well.
Yep. Ben Duffy.
Well, see, that was one of those people I was going to leave in the dark.
Why?
See, that's a journalism person.
I wouldn't know that.
I know. See? The rest of the names I got. Too funny.
Well, it's not like well, whatever.
Hey, shout out to Ben Duffy. He is a fellow journalist who felt bad for the furloughs that we're enduring.
Maybe he just wanted to listen to the show.
And decided to help support us a little bit.
Maybe he just wanted to listen.
I doubt he'll ever listen. I just think he wanted to give us some love.
Maybe he just loves some cold coffee.
He might have been.
Unless he's Holly Beck, Holly Beck only listens because she hopes that hot tea comes back on board.
Holly.
That's why we had him.
Is that like a Tinder date of yours or something?
No, that's literally never knew that woman in her life.
Sure.
I'd like to.
All right, let's talk about the rest of this card real quick.
Swiped right. Is that the good way? Right?
That's a good way.
Right.
Anyway.
Right is good.
The rest of the card.
Let's talk about the rest of the card real quick. Interesting. 9 Contender Series fighters on there. Would have been 10 had it not been for Kevin Holland, who I know we wanted to see fight, or at least I in particular wanted to see fight. So that will be interesting because so much of this card is not really adjusting to anything new. I mean, granted, at Contender Series, there are some people at least, but it's not many. And I will say, the soundproofing in that place makes the crowd like really quiet in there. Like it's bizarre.
Yeah, I think if anyone expects a similar sort of quiet but fun atmosphere from Jacksonville, it's going to be different, dude.
It's going to be dead quiet,
especially if the commentators aren't in the room. It's going to be coaches only. I think, right?
Which the commentators aren't in the room for Contender Series. We haven't been able to find out yet what the final setup was. I asked some people, and they weren't sure yet. So
they can't be in there.
I don't think they're going to be in there.
They'd literally be shouting at the fighter.
That is a sound stage. So there's an incredible amount of soundproofing equipment in there. So as you said, and we talked about it a little bit in Florida. If anybody was listening there, like. Yes, there was no atmosphere in Florida, but there still was a little bit because there were some echoes and there was some room to it. You know, the sound stage of the Contender Series, we've seen fights in there. It's weirdly quiet because the sound is actually absorbed, so it doesn't bounce back at you. It's odd.
Yeah, watching it in the arena, like I joked about last I was on the show, it felt like a billionaire with people fighting for you. When you're in the Contender Series, it's almost like watching a snuff film. It's a bit like, this is intense. Like, it's so quiet.
So bizarre. All right, let's just quickly, like I said, I don't want to break down the whole card, of course. I mean, the main event was, of course, the chief attraction. But I'll be honest with you, I don't mean to be critical of them. I'm a little surprised by the co-main event. Blagoy Ivanov versus Augusto Sakai. Heavyweights, they are ranked in the UFC rankings. So
I mean, it's no Spike Carlisle fight.
Well, so here's the thing. Here's the thing is I don't want to take away from Blagoy or Augusto, man. Augusto has an impressive career record. He looks like a guy on the rise. Blagoy, I mean, survived a stabbing in the chest, and he's a super nice guy. He's been in Vegas here forever. Run into him in Extreme Couture all the time. He's very, very pleasant. Obviously has the great story of beating Fedor in Combat Sambo years and years ago, back when Fedor was the man. So he has history, but just they're not the most aesthetically pleasing, stylistic heavyweights of all time. So I was just a little bit surprised to see it show up in the co-main event slot.
I mean, they do have the heavyweight factor for them. There's always that X factor with the heavyweights. Maybe you are going to get this big rock'em sock'em, exciting fight that can happen. And I think they do need to build up some of these guys in the heavyweight division.
Sure.
I mean, there are the guys at the top that everybody's sort of been talking about, Francis. But now you got people talking like, oh, is John Jones going to come over to heavyweight? Is somebody else going to kind of come over to heavyweight? I think they're really sort of struggling to build the rest of the division. So this might be their attempt to sort of spotlight, hey, guys, there are other people in the heavyweight.
It's just a weird one to me to
spotlight. It is a weird one.
Well, I mean,
out of some of the other ones on the main card, you would think that I could have easily seen other ones get spotlighted.
I thought Mackenzie Dern.
I thought Mackenzie Dern would be the one that was in the co-main event.
And it's also
that fight of the night.
Marketability. But when you talk about, hard-hitting heavyweights, someone's going to sleep. I don't think of Blagoy Ivanov.
No, he's a grinder.
He went to decision with Derek Lewis, right?
Yeah.
So I don't really see this fight being a finish. I think he might unfortunately get a 3-round.
This could be the one.
I agree. I think this could be and again, that's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to disrespect them or anything like that. It's just, to me, when you're thinking about that action, you're building. I think you're going to build a little bit, and that one's going to stall a little bit because you joked about Spike Carlisle. Spike Carlisle and Billy Quarantillo, I think, could be a phenomenal fight. It was originally on the prelims. It got bumped up to the main card. I think this was a good call because it looks like it's going to be exciting. Spike Carlisle, of course, if you don't remember the name, just remember that demonic laugh he had as he was being introduced by Bruce Buffer last time. It was so amazing. Today at the media day, he had the most uncomfortable, and I wish I knew who was asking the question, so I'm sorry, whichever journalist it was. But he asked about the fight, and Spike Carlisle was like, hey, what do you think about the fight? And Spike Carlisle was like, what's a gift? And he was like, and the journalist was just like, what do you mean? He's like, what is your definition of a gift? And he's like, it's like something that somebody gives you that's nice, that you appreciate. He's like, I don't know where you're going with this. The journalist actually, I don't know where you're going with this. Yes, it was hilarious.
Oh, no.
So rather than just answer the question, he was like, what are you getting at? And so finally Spike's like, what's your definition of a gift?
Oh my
and so he
God.
gives a definition of a gift, and Spike's like, that's what this is to me.
To our peers in the media, sometimes got to play along, dude. Let them get their good line out.
It was funny. He's like, where are you going with this?
Sorry, I'm asking the questions here.
God, it was hilarious. And what did he say? It's going to be a massacre. He did say that. It's going to be a massacre. So he's an interesting guy. And he also said, he's an interesting cat. Like, he mentioned his faith in Jesus and all that a couple times. But this will be something I'll definitely ask if he wins. Which no guarantee. And Billy Quarantillo is a tough matchup. But somebody asked him about his beard and his mustache and all that, and he said, I don't really want to get into it right now. But these won't be going anywhere for a while. So I guess he's like just letting it all grow, like
Samsonite,
like Samson or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Samsonite's a briefcase. Jesus Christ.
So anyway, that's an interesting character. And because, look, Spike Carlisle was originally on the prelims, but I think he's such a character I was going to tell people, make sure you watch out for him. He's on the main card now. And again, no disrespect to Billy Quarantillo. Super nice guy. He's up there in the Northeast, and he's a great fighter as well, so it's a good matchup. But Spike is just an interesting character. The other one I wanted to tell people watch out for is Brock Weaver as well.
Yeah.
But I will say this. I think Roosevelt Roberts is, which, by the way, he told Nolan King this week he doesn't really want to be called Roosevelt. He just wants to be Roe. But we go with whatever the UFC goes with.
I'm going to say no.
Wow, just shut it down there. But Brock Weaver is such a character.
That's going to be a hell of a fight.
There's something about that's going to be a scrap.
Hell of a fight.
But Brock is a he's got Native American ties. That's that makes him interesting as well. But you could take that out of the equation. And it's just he's got something, that X factor. There's something about him.
Yeah.
You're drawn to him a little bit.
Well, I met Brock backstage at a Bare Knuckle FC event, I think, for Artem.
Oh, wow.
Jason. And if you don't know who Brock Weaver is, the best way I could describe him to you is that he's at a Bare Knuckle event, cheering him on. He was quite enthusiastic, and he was he's a very cool guy.
Yeah.
But very much the sort of person I was like, okay, I would really hate to bump into you at a bar or something like that,
You could tell he's been in a Street Fighter too.
Yeah, or two. Yeah, I think so. But he
24.
He's got a charismatic thing about him. I think he reminds me, not to compare him to people, but he reminds me sort of like Mike Perry, where it's like this guy probably just is a fighter, just they're going to get in there and they're just going to have at it, and then sort of what happens.
He actually, so it's funny, if you remember Brock, he came through the Contender Series. He's one of those 9 guys. Then his debut was back in February against Kazula Vargas, his UFC debut, I should say, and he got hit with an illegal knee. I mean, a viciously illegal knee.
Yes,
he was knocked
he's
out
cold,
So he gets knocked out cold. He wins by DQ. Obviously not the way anybody wants to win. He literally is like apologizing afterwards, like, bro, you got knocked out by an illegal knee, you ain't got nothing to apologize for. But it was funny. He was kind of asked about today, hey, would you like a rematch? He's like, the only way I'm taking a rematch with that dude is if we get pride rules. He's like, because he did that to me, and I'm going to do that to him. You know what I mean?
So like Brock Weaver.
That's the guy. He's the person. But I like Roosevelt Roberts a lot as well, man. I really think. Yeah, I like Roe. Roe Roberts is a guy that I think has a lot of upside as well. So that's one.
That's gonna be a hell of a fight.
That's going to be a great fight. And then, of course, the main card rounds out with Hannah Cyphers versus Mackenzie Dern. Listen, bottom line is it's pretty easy, I think, to figure this one out. Hannah she's just a small person, man. She's small for the division. But if she can keep it on her feet,
she's got a chance.
She's got a chance.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, Mackenzie doesn't mind going in and scrapping a little bit, but she's a little bit wild. She's, obviously her jiu-jitsu pedigree is off the charts. If Mackenzie Dern gets on the floor, Hannah's in a lot of trouble. Mackenzie, of course, has trouble making the weight. Now, she says she's not having trouble now. She actually says being a mom, pregnancy actually kind of changed her body. It's easier for her to cut weight now, that sort of thing, for whatever reason, which obviously, a lot of chemicals go through your body. It does change.
Let's not pretend we know.
Well, I only know because my wife, I've watched it firsthand, like how it literally changes things about you. So that's the only reason. I definitely don't know firsthand, but I know it from talking to my wife. But so anyway, Mackenzie's somebody that, had to cut hard to get to the division. Hannah, I'm imagining, probably just walks around it that way. Yeah. So there's a size discrepancy between the two, but the skill set is definitely a differential. Caitlin Chukagian versus Antonina Shevchenko. Wild for Caitlin Chukagian that she loses a title fight in February and then has to fight the champ's sister. I thought that was such a weird matchup. Now, I talked to Caitlin earlier this week. She said, look, I don't care. They're 2 different people. They're 2 different matchups. I'm not worried about it. I want to say this is on the prelims, but the UFC kind of treated this like it was a main card fight. They gave them, extra pre-fight media, all that sort of thing. So, I mean, this is a big fight in the division. And Caitlin told me, she said, look, I feel like I'm not fighting with the pressure that I once did, because now, for the longest time, she was kind of the number one contender, and she was saying, man, I knew I was in that spot, and, she didn't say it, but I know she's not the most marketable person. Like, she's not out there, you know what I mean? She's just kind of her, and she does her thing. And I think she knew that she was in a delicate position, so she said, look, I was just fighting not to lose, man. I knew if I lost, that was bad, and I don't feel that anymore. So she's excited to kind of redeem herself a little bit. But Antonina Shevchenko, of course, important to remember, just because you're somebody's sister don't mean you fight the exact same way as they do. Antonina a lot more raw in her MMA career than her sister is, of course. Valentina, one of the top pound-for-pound fighters on the planet, but still an intriguing matchup and an important matchup.
Yeah, I think I don't think it's any secret why this fight was made. They probably look at the younger Shevchenko sister and think, look, we can bank off one, we can probably make bank off the other, and it in a weird sort of movie way, like it makes sense. I'll fight the sister. That always gets people's attention, and then you can also think, well, she's a former title contender, so it's a big jump up in competition for Shevchenko, really.
Definitely.
So I think it's no secret what the UFC have booked this fight in mind for, and I don't think Chookagian's smart. I don't think she is unaware of why she's been put in this fight, And I actually think there's probably a lot more on the line for Chookagian than most people think. I think if you look at, she just fought for the title, and then the huge jump down in competition she's now facing.
Right.
I think she probably wants to right that train pretty quickly, because look, I just think of Liz Carmouche. Someone could be winning, and then suddenly they can think, we've used you. We had the title fight out of you.
So
we don't
crazy,
need
right?
you anymore.
Title fight and gone.
Yeah, we don't need you anymore. So I kind of think maybe she might just not to put pressure on the woman, but she might need to be aware of that.
Yeah, I agree. All right, I'll ask you guys for one thing that you're looking forward to on the rest of it, the rest of the prelims. Gabriel Green, of course, stepped in to face Kevin, or to replace Kevin Holland, I should say, which I know we were all bummed about that, man. After everything that happened down in Florida, we were so excited to see him compete again against Daniel Rodriguez. Instead, Gabriel Green, who seems to be a decent talent, he's stepping in on short notice. Clidson Abreu versus Jamal Hill. Tim Elliott, Brandon Royval. Brandon Royval was supposed to be on the Contender Series, which is still kind of up in the air whether that's going to happen. I kind of lean towards no, that I've heard reports that it will.
Dana said today
he said for sure it will.
He said it's happening this summer.
Interesting, because I'd heard it was still kind of up in the air, so that's good, I guess. To be honest, dude, I'd love it if we can go Tuesday night, Saturday night. Man, our weeks will be set.
Ooh, that's my
birthday.
Every day.
June 23rd. That'll be my birthday.
We'll be getting tested a lot.
I'll make sure to ask every fighter to say something about my birthday.
You should do that,
because it'll be my birthday.
Casey Kinney versus Lewis Smoka, another big fight there, and Chris Gutierrez versus Vince Morales. So again, a lot of Contender Series veterans. Tim Elliott, I was a little surprised to see him that far down on the card. No disrespect to him, but I was a little surprised to see that he wasn't a little higher up. He's an exciting fighter, facing a newcomer, Brandon Royval, who Brandon was. Nolan King talked to him earlier this week, and Brandon was saying, It's kind of fun for me because I get to fight a guy that I've watched a bunch, and he doesn't know nothing about me. He doesn't know anything. So I don't know, anything stand out to you as a name or a fight or anything on those prelims that you're looking forward to or people should watch out for?
You kind of touched on it. Well, you said Tim Elliott. I think
Yeah,
I'm always into every
He's
Tim
fun.
Elliott fight. Yeah, I just
fun.
love him during the fight week. I love his fights. I love. You know what you're going to get. Same with Louis Smoka. I mean, when you look at this card, I mean, this is a good card. And I know we say it a lot of times for some of these ones that people tend to call stinkers. When you look down the line, in every fight, there's a person or, that's interesting and worth watching.
It's lacking on, like, if I was thinking from a website operator's point of view, like, man, what are going to be the big stories this week? I get it. It's lacking on star power. But if you're just saying, like, hey, man, on Saturday, I want to see some good fights, I think we got it.
There's some good fights.
Yeah.
Even the I always butcher his name. Jamal Hill.
Jamal Hill. Yeah.
Jamal Hill.
Hill.
I want to say all the syllables that I see.
Jamal.
Jamal. But it's just Jamal. Like I think he is a super exciting fighter.
Yeah.
Like I'm very, very interested in that fight as well.
I agree.
But if I had to pick one without doing the George Garcia claim every fight, I'm going to say the Tim Elliott fight.
It was so great. We were doing a video earlier this week, and on the video we were asking him to, or Simon Head actually was asking him to, like, hey, name one fight that you're looking forward to, and he named like 7.
He went down the roster.
Yeah, he went down like all of it. It's just like, what are we left with? Like, what are we supposed to get? So great.
Well, see,
so great.
just never be ashamed to just repeat someone else's answer. I'm going to say Tim Elliott as well, man. Like,
so good. All right, listen, we will have full coverage. We will do an and a half on patreon.com/MMA Roadshow, which I think we got a lot of people's attention about the Patreon was this story with John Jones this past week, man. Yes. It was pretty wild. So here's the story.
I just wish people could hear it. Like, I heard the interview.
Right.
But I know that Jones wanted it written. He didn't want to hear it. And I know a lot of people were asking about the sincerity and the other stuff. And you can't – it's hard to explain sincerity when you're reading something. I mean, I think you did a wonderful job of
especially when you have a reputation like John, you know.
Well, so here's what happened. So it's just so everybody knows, here's what happened. This is crazy. So last week we were recording the episode, and I'm telling you, like, hey, we closed up, shut the computer, good, done. And the moment we finish recording, my phone rings, and it's Abe Kawa, and John's manager, of course, and had no idea why he was calling. Now I was on furlough at the time, but we're allowed to do the podcast together because it's not a USA Today owned property.
It's ours.
It's ours, damn it. So I picked up the phone. Hey, what's going on?
Spotify, where you at?
Where you at? Yeah, we don't even need, give us like a tenth of Joe Rogan money. No,
I'll take much less than a tenth.
a point. So pick up the phone, just say, what's up, Abe? And he was like, hey, what's going on, man? Oh, nothing. He's like, hey, remember that interview that John promised you down in Houston? I'm like, yeah, of course. He's like, he's ready to give it to you. I got him on the phone, and I was just like,
Fuck it. At least you were near a recording thing instead of like being at a supermarket or something.
Well, you're right, not being a super. Here's the funny thing is normally, like, if I'm at home, I have a bunch of equipment and stuff. Because we had literally finished, we didn't have anything set up, like, it was the most...
Oh, it was that phone recorder?
Yeah, it was a phone to that microphone right there. It was
bizarre. Opened up a recording program on the computer and then had
but we got it done. But I will say, so you hit up something, and I found this interesting. I found this really, really interesting. John said, listen, if you don't mind, I would prefer this be a written story versus audio or video. He's like, I want a written story. And I thought that was so interesting because I know we're in this day and age of, audio, video, that sort of thing. I mean, it pays better and all that. But I kind of liked the idea of, like, he's like, I want my words on paper. You know what I mean? Like, when you do interviews that are just video, I mean, that's the world we live in, right? Like, people just write 2 sentences and here's John Jones. And then all the stories are like 1 sentence here, 1 key sentence here, 1 key sentence there. I don't know, man. I felt interesting that he wanted that. It actually kind of because I don't get to write as much as I used to. I love writing. I really do love writing. It's why I got into this. But now the way the world has moved and the way it is, I don't get to write as much as I want. But I found it very interesting that John Jones said, I want this to be a written story. And I don't know. It kind of gave me some faith, and maybe that the written word won't go away, that it won't be all audio, video sometimes.
I think so, and I think sometimes too, you could tell that, and part of it, why I read it as why he was saying that was, there was a lot of emotion. There was a lot of like moments where he's taking these breaths to figure out what I want to say. And a lot of times,
how pissed off was he on the phone?
Well, that's great. So I think it was Moona. I believe it was Moona, our good friend Moona that we've known for a long time, that asked, John, I don't mind. I hope you don't mind me asking this, but how sincere did you think John Jones was being? And you're right. It would be nice to be able to judge sincerity, and that's a great question.
Sorry to cut you off, by the way, Kenny, but
he was emotional. He was emotional.
That's it. And I think any person in the public spotlight or anybody probably would rather let me think out what I want to say. Let me come at you with the right thoughts, and let that be what comes out. Because there was a lot of moments of these, like,
he'd take a pause and gather himself.
These frustrations.
Yep.
You could sense the frustration. You could sense it, and that's why I say, in listening to it, and when I was sitting here listening to it, I felt the sincerity. I felt the frustration. I felt the, and what I loved about it was that they trusted the fact that they knew that what he said wasn't going to get twisted. And that's why I felt where he was like, I want you to write this. And he was like, write this, Morgan. He was like, put this out. He's like, but it didn't feel weird to me at the time when he was like, I just don't want this recorded, because it would be like asking somebody, say if there was somebody that was just dealing with a loss in a death in the family or something that was emotional, but you had something heartfelt that you wanted to say. The last thing I would want you to put out there is me in my moments of frustration or me fumbling over my words.
I felt it allowed him to speak more freely, because he would say, like, I would ask him a question, he would say, he would, like you said, he would take a deep breath and he would say, how do I want to answer this? And then, what do I want to say?
And we had technical difficulties too. I mean, the call broke up a couple times.
That is true. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Morgan.
He was like John. He was in the mountains. He was in the mountains or something.
Do you think he knew that if you have it on spoken, written down, it's more of a statement, whereas if you have him on audio or video, sort of going, I'm unhappy about this, it sounds more like a rant.
I think so.
Do you think he understood that, like, if I come across as audio, people are going to think I'm being a petulant spoiler? Because John's reputation as well is so bad.
And I think there was one point where he even said, like, he was like, before we even started, I think he even said, he's like, look, I'm not mad. He's like, I'm not trying to come at the UFC. He's like, I'm just honestly disappointed.
Well,
man.
the quote that stuck with me from your piece was, I feel like someone's put a ceiling on me. And
that was a good. That stuck with me too.
And that was the quote that I took away from it, because I remember when John was suspended and Mayweather McGregor happened, he came back from that and he said, I took a lot of inspiration from Conor, like making the most amount of money he possibly could by picking his moment.
Yeah.
And I think John probably thought this was his moment with the heavyweight division, where like he could make the most amount of money he could.
I get it.
And absolutely. And I think if what he says is true, they said, oh, when you move up, we'll give you a bumper contract. I would feel pretty hard done by like fuck. So the term putting a ceiling on is perfect. It's like, so not only do these ideas of how many millions I could make, you've just taken away from them by that.
Yep.
Like, I could think to myself, I'll fight in Ghana for this much, I'll fight for the world title at heavyweight at this much. You're planning, it's the way we are, you plan with that money already.
And it's all gone.
It's gone in one conversation.
Yep.
So I understand completely why he'd feel frustrated, and the term putting a ceiling on my limit is perfect as well.
It's a great description.
Because, man, like, he's the greatest of all time. As Dana said today in an interview with Brett Okamoto, he said John Jones is inarguably the greatest of all time in this sport. So how much is too much then? How much is too much for him? Because if he's the greatest of all time, moving up to fight this murderous killer, how much is too much?
I agree. It's going to be an interesting conversation that, hopefully Dana does a post-fight this weekend and we can talk to him about it. I mean, as we've been recording this, we've seen it, as you said, the interview with Brett Okamoto where he said, like, John was asking for a certain amount of money. John has since taken to Twitter and say, basically echoing the sentiments he told me, we never even got to a financial discussion.
Yeah.
Now, had Abe maybe floated a figure behind the scenes?
Look,
maybe.
You never know, and MMA and MMA management is a complex and flowy business.
Yeah.
So because you could even throw out a figure half-heartedly, be like, I don't know, 25 million, and then that could get back to Dana.
Well, bro, he wants 25 million. Yeah, you're so right about that. I don't think people understand that. So it'll be interesting to talk to Dana this week. But anyway, I just want to share that story because I know a lot of people were like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And in fact, I just wanted to let people know what happened. In fact, and this is not the chief reason why I wanted to share it. I just thought people would be interested by it. But I did have some people that thought like, oh, bro, you really stuck it to your employers, whatever. I'm like, that's really not it. Like, it was just, I wasn't trying to take a swipe. Like, the rules of furlough are that you can't do anything for work. And so when I got this call, unsuspecting.
No, what you should have done is said, sorry, John Jones.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have you talk about the UFC to me.
I'm going to need this. I'm going to need this next week when I'm back working again. Yeah. So I don't know. I thought it was an interesting story just with the circumstances. But to be clear, I was not trying to stick it to USA Today or MMA Junkie. I've been with MMA Junkie for like 14, 15 years now, and it's how I've supported myself and paid my life. So I wasn't trying to stick to them. It was a weird situation. I was like, well, I mean, it's not every day that John Jones calls you out of the blue. And remember that interview I promised you 3 months ago? Let's do it now. And taking it to Patreon was the only way I could get it out there, that I could legally get it out there, basically.
Yeah. But for people that do wonder about his sincerity, if I had to go on record and say, did I think he was sincere? After hearing him in the interview, I felt he was sincere.
That's true. Yeah.
Not to drag on the podcast for much longer than it needs to be, but do you feel like we've done these before over the years, but do you think we're heading to a moment John wants more money, Ngannou wants more money, Kamaru wants more money, Masvidal wants money?
Yeah.
At a time when money appears to be tighter than ever.
Colby wants more money. There's a lot of your big guys that you need to... This is the time you strike. There's no other sports. This is the time. And now all the guys you want to turn to strike with are saying, actually... time I get paid more. Do you think we're heading to a moment where either, and we've seen how this goes in the past, the UFC usually don't let that slide. I think they've let it slide for maybe 2 people in the history of their company, where Conor can get a bumper pay rise, and back in the day Tito got a bumper one. And I don't think they really enjoy doing that themselves. Do you think we're heading for a moment where big name fighters are going to say, I will not fight for a whole year if it means you don't pay me? Do you think we're heading to that moment? Because it feels like for the first time in a long time, it feels like multiple big names all at once.
I mean, if you wanted to lump Cejudo in there, you could.
I mean, to be honest, the ironic thing is if Masvidal and Kamaru and their managers were maybe not so at heads, they could work together to find themselves a much better deal, like Stipe and DC did back for the first fight. They worked together to get. But it seems to me, for the first time in a long time, we've got multiple big name fighters saying, no, it's time I got paid.
You know what's interesting? You are right with that. And I wonder if this pandemic and again, just kind of wondering and thinking out loud. I mean, the idea of the fighters ever coming together for an organization or union, man, I've seen it for years and years and years and years and years. And
Shit,
it never
even the
happens.
journalists can't even do it.
Yeah, exactly, right? The people that cover it that say they should can't even really do it. But you know what, man? Like, seeing now how, like, all the players' associations are able to push back. You know, like, I think Major League Baseball has come out and saying, like, hey, we're going to pay you, like, 25% or whatever. And they're like, hell no. You know? So I do wonder if some of the athletes are sitting back and, like, watching the power that these players' associations have, especially right now, because, of course, they always have the power, but we never really hear about it as much as we're hearing about it right now, where, like, the leagues are having to change everything on the fly. And whereas the UFC can just go, this is what we're doing, all these other leagues have to go, this is what we think we want to do, and now we just got to go make sure it's okay with the players.
Yeah, it's a weird one because I think, speaking as a fan, this sounds really horrible, but I don't think a fighters' union is in my interest as a fan. I think if a fighters' union happen, I'm going to see a lot of fights not happen.
I agree.
I'm going to see a lot of stuff being stalled out. But if I was a fighter, John Jones can't get his pay rise for a fight with Ngannou, but you guys have enough money to rent an island, you know, for a few months. Which, incidentally, by the way, 2 days ago, the U.S. government just signed into law that foreign athletes are considered essential people that can now enter the country, so you don't really need a fight island.
Except that the next day they blocked people from Brazil coming.
Oh, fantastic. Of course they did. Well, that's not fair. This government would never get mixed up. But my point is, you know, and then...
Yeah, don't you wish you came from a country that their government was just run, you know, as efficiently...
But I just think... I just think we're reaching a bit of a moment, you know, and I think it's funny that it's not someone like George St. Pierre or Connor or Nate. It's not the ultra stars, but it's going to be like the tier below. It's going to be the Masvidals who are like, I deserve more money, and they do, man. They actually do.
Of course, they deserve as much as they can get, man. That's the truth about it.
It's just a bit of a weird time in the sport, and I think you're right. I think we're all stuck inside. We've got a lot more time to think. I think maybe some people are like, I don't like this revenue split I'm seeing on TV.
It would be the time to do it. You know, it's just unfortunate with a sport like this and with the athletes. It's not like they can sit out forever. You know, there's a fine time for when you can operate at your peak level, and if you try to hold out and you want to try to hold out, some of these guys that maybe have done decent.
Well, look at Nate. Like, Nate's out all the time. You know.
Yeah, I mean, he's like a freak of nature. That dude's just crazy. But it's like most of your average fighters don't have enough money saved up right now to take a year or two off of fighting. You know, and then would you want to step away from the game for 2 years and then expect to come back in? Because then at that point, on point. Are you as good? And there you got these young kids that have been training nonstop, working their way up. Now have 2 more years of experience, and so the UFC's like, well, hey, if the old timers don't want to do it, we'll let the new crop. But this is the perfect time for them to try to start a union.
I wonder if welterweight is the perfect example of what we're seeing. So, number 1 and number 2, Jorge and Usman, both want more money. But the UFC can't go to number 3 because Colby wants more money as well. And then, you know, if they can't go to Colby, they want number 4, who maybe say is Tyron. He's going to want more money as well. And then Leon, he can come in, and Kamaru's going, I'm not going to fight him. So now
Leon's like, I'll just take a fight. Just give me a fight.
But so now they've literally got like 3 or 4 people in a row who are refusing to back down. You need to make the decision move. What, they're going to strip Kamaru and have Burns versus Edwards for the title? They can't. Yeah. They can do what they want, but they can't do that. You know,
it's not even like the same dollar amount is needed for each guy. The number 3 guy maybe could take a $50,000, $100,000 bump, which to one of the top tier guys might be like, no, that's not good enough for me. I want $250 or $500, you know, more. Whereas like your 4th or 5th guy might have a bending point a lot sooner than some of the other guys, you know, and that's the whole point of them doing a sort of a joint collective where it's like it has to be this amount for everybody or we won't bend. Well, that's tough going to a guy that's making, you know, maybe 80 and 80, which is great compared to a lot of the other fighters, and they say, okay, you're right, we're going to bump you up to 150. We're going to, in a sense, double your salary. It'd be tough to say no to that, even though, you know, the other guy's like, no, I want a $200,000.
Well,
increase,
talking about quotes from the story, you know, Abe Kawa's quote where he was like, you know, the UFC's not taking any risk. Why don't they share in the risk a little bit? You know, like,
it's true.
I found that interesting.
You're getting guys to fight in a global pandemic, by the way.
Yeah, no doubt. I found that interesting because, listen, I've always said that, like, I don't think that the financial discussions, like comparing them to stick and ball sports and stuff, is always like an easy direct comparison because the UFC does have a lot of infrastructure and they have spent a lot of money marketing, getting the sport accepted, getting all this stuff that other sports don't have to deal with. So I understand that like they've got a little bit more overhead than some of these other league offices do, and that probably needs to be understood. But I thought the way Abe phrased it was perfect. Like, dude, we're going in there taking risks. Like, if you know this is going to be a hit, just put more on the front end. And again, it goes back to that was an argument Randy Couture had back in the day. He's like, dude, I don't want to know some variable on the back end. Pay me pay me a set figure, and you take all the bonus.
Of all the years to know that is this year.
Yes.
Who would have predicted the coronavirus? It's absolutely reasonable for a fighter to be like, I understand the argument that John will make more on the back end against Ngannou than he would against Dominic Reyes. Completely get that argument.
Right.
So that's in their interest to be like, you just wait. It's not in John's interest to have that fight booked, and then the Friday before his fight booked, the biggest earthquake of all time happens in Europe and just like wipes out the continent, and they still go ahead with the fight because it's the UFC.
Yep.
And then his pay-per-views are done. Like, there's no need for them. Like,
so many
just
variables.
hit the nail. Like, they should have some risk too. Like, and also, with all due respect to Dana, like, he wasn't asking for $100 million up front.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, he probably wasn't. He was probably asking for double. And if I believe his upfront fee reported for the Reyes fight was like $500,000.
Yeah. Which we know those are crap.
Yeah, those are crap. But
it will be interesting to see if we can get either a dollar figure or a percentage.
If I was John, I'd put a dollar figure on Twitter right now and say that's what I want for this fight. Because then Dana has to respond to say that dollar figure is not worth it. That's like if John puts out and goes, I want $8 million up front for this fight, Dana then has to explain why $8 million is not worth it for Jones versus Ngannou.
And then people will do the math and figure out why it should be.
Yeah. But I mean, how can you turn around and say John's not worth $8 million at this point?
Oh, he has to be. Interesting.
It's a weird one. It's a weird sport right now.
It will be a continued discussion as this year goes on because I don't think we're getting crowds back anytime soon, and we'll see if people keep pushing their merit a little bit. We'll see. All right, listen, we've talked long enough. We got beer to drink. We got things to do. We got weigh-ins in the morning.
Oh yeah, shit.
Kind of. I know. I know. It doesn't feel like a fight week. I'm telling you, it's so weird, man. We actually got to go to the weigh-ins in the morning, so we'll cover that all. We'll have it all on MMA Junkie, and of course, we'll talk about it here. So in the meantime, make sure you go to patreon.com/MMA Roadshow. That way you get an and a half episode. If anything else, let me just say, thanks for listening.